My name is Sophia. I am 34 years old, and the worst night of my marriage was also, without question, the night everything finally began to go right. I want you to picture our dining room, candles burning low, the smell of rosemary chicken I had been cooking for 2 hours, our nicest plates, the ones we only used when Marcus wanted to impress someone, a bottle of red wine I had been saving since our last anniversary. I had set the table myself, smoothed the cloth twice, and stood back and thought that it looked beautiful. And then the front door opened. Marcus walked in first. He had that particular smile he wore when he believed he was in full control of a situation. And behind him, a woman stepped through the door of my home with the quiet, assessing calm of someone who had already decided how much everything in the room was worth. She was tall, dark hair pulled back perfectly, a cream blazer, fitted trousers, the kind of presence that does not announce itself because it does not need to. Marcus looked at me and said, with complete composure, "Sophia, this is Diana, a colleague of mine. I hope you do not mind. I invited her to join us." A colleague. I looked at Diana, and she looked at me, and for exactly 1 second, something moved behind her eyes that I could not immediately name. It was not guilt. It was not embarrassment. It looked like recognition, and I had absolutely no idea yet why. Before I tell you what happened at that dinner, I need to tell you about Marcus. Not the Marcus I discovered he was, but the Marcus I believed he was for 6 years. Because you cannot understand what broke, unless you understand what I thought was whole. I met Marcus when I was 28. He was 32, charming in that particular way that makes you feel like the most interesting person in the room. My mother met him at our third date and smiled with a warmth that did not quite reach her eyes. She told me later, privately, that he was the kind of man who knew exactly what to say and that I should pay attention to the gap between what a man says and what he does. I was in love. I did not listen. We got married after 18 months of dating. The first 2 years were genuinely good. Marcus was climbing fast at his corporate consulting firm, and I was running an interior design business I had built from nothing. We were busy and ambitious and happy, or at least I was happy, and I believed he was too. The cracks showed up quietly in year 3. Not in a single moment. There was no dramatic fight, no discovered text message, nothing that announced itself. Just a slow, accumulating distance. Marcus started staying late. He came home past 10, sometimes past midnight. The excuses were always just plausible enough. A client presentation, a last-minute meeting, a deal that could not wait. I never pushed back. I trusted him. That is what you do when you love someone without reservation. By year 4, the warmth between us had become something more like courtesy. We were not unhappy in the screaming, door-slamming way. We were 2 people being very polite to each other in a house that was beautifully decorated and deeply quiet. I noticed things. A perfume on his collar that was not mine. A name that appeared too often on his phone screen. Claire. He always explained it easily. Claire was his boss, of course her name was on his phone. What was I implying? He was not defensive about it. And somehow that calmness unsettled me more than defensiveness would have. A guilty man flinches. Marcus never flinched. I started paying attention differently. I started looking at our finances with more care than I had allowed myself in years. Marcus had gradually restructured things I had not questioned at the time. Joint accounts reduced, property documents I had signed without fully reading, investment accounts that only he managed. I had let it all happen because I trusted him. And because, if I am being completely honest with myself, I did not want to find what I was starting to suspect was there. But 3 months before the dinner, something shifted inside me. Not dramatically, just a quiet, final decision. I was done accepting the feeling of something being wrong and talking myself out of investigating it. I needed information. I needed to understand exactly what I was dealing with before I made any move. So I did something I told nobody about. I hired a lawyer. Not a divorce lawyer, specifically. I was not ready to use that word yet. I needed someone who understood both family law and financial structures. Someone who could help me read what was actually happening beneath the surface of our finances and tell me where I stood legally. I called a firm I had found through a recommendation from a friend of a friend. They gave me the name of a woman who specialized in exactly this kind of situation. I spoke to her on the phone first. She was measured, precise, intelligent. She asked questions that cut directly to the heart of every concern I had been quietly carrying for 2 years. She told me to come in for a private consultation. She told me to bring whatever financial documents I had access to, however incomplete they seemed. She told me her name before we hung up. Her name was Diana. 3 months later, my husband walked her through our front door and introduced her as his colleague. And I stood at the head of my own dinner table, holding a serving spoon, trying to process the fact that the woman who knew every secret I had ever shared about Marcus was standing next to him like she belonged there. I had exactly 4 seconds to decide what kind of woman I was going to be at that dinner table. I know that sounds dramatic, but I have thought about it many times since, and it really was 4 seconds. The time it took me to recognize Diana's face, feel the floor shift beneath me, and understand that I had a choice. I could react, show it on my face, ask the question that would have blown everything open immediately, or I could stay completely still, absorb what I was seeing, and watch. I chose to watch. I set the serving spoon down slowly and I smiled at Diana with the full warmth of a woman who had no idea who she was. "Diana, what a lovely surprise. Please, sit down. There is more than enough food." She looked at me for a beat longer than was comfortable. Her expression did not break. She smiled back and said, "Thank you, Sophia. Your home is beautiful." Her voice was the exact same voice that had asked me 3 months ago, "Does your husband know you are speaking with a lawyer?" The same voice that had said, "Everything you share with me is fully protected." I stood in my own dining room hearing that voice come out of a woman standing next to my husband, and I felt something extraordinary happen inside me. The panic I had expected did not arrive. What arrived instead was a very cold, very focused clarity. I looked at her and I thought, she is here for a reason. And until I know what that reason is, my only job is to give nothing away. Marcus poured wine like a man who had rehearsed this. He was relaxed and talkative, filling the silence with stories about a deal his firm had just closed, throwing numbers around in that particular way men do when they are performing success for an audience. He never looked nervous, not once. He talked about Claire, his boss, with the same easy casualness he always used, the practiced nonchalance of a man trying to make a name sound ordinary through repetition. I watched Diana across the table, and here is what I noticed. The thing that started to untangle the knot in my chest. She was not watching Marcus the way a woman watches a man she is attracted to. There was no softness in it. She was studying him. The way she asked questions about Claire, quiet, precise questions that sounded like polite dinner conversation but carried a specific surgical weight, told me she was not there as his date. She was working. I excused myself to get dessert. The moment I stepped behind the kitchen wall and out of their eye line, I gripped the countertop with both hands and took 3 slow, deliberate breaths. My mind was moving very fast through the possible explanations. Had Diana told Marcus about me? Was this dinner a performance? A warning? Marcus showing me that he knew I had been gathering information? Or was something else happening? Something I did not yet have enough information to see clearly? I picked up the dessert plates, walked back to the table, and spent the next 40 minutes being the most attentive hostess I had ever been in my life. Dinner ended. Marcus offered to drive Diana home. I said I was perfectly happy to clear up alone, kissed him on the cheek, and watched their car disappear down the street. I sat down at the table I had set so carefully, surrounded by half-empty wine glasses and the smell of cold food, and my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "We need to talk. Not at the office. Tomorrow morning. The coffee shop on Garland Street. 7 a.m. Come alone. D." I sat with that message for a long time. I thought about calling Diana's professional number and demanding an explanation. I thought about calling my sister. I thought about driving to Marcus's office and putting everything on the table right now, tonight, before another hour passed. But I did none of those things. I put my phone face down, poured myself the last of the wine, and I sat in the quiet of my own home, thinking about what Diana might know that was dangerous enough to say outside of her own office. I did not sleep that night. I lay in the dark next to Marcus, listening to him breathe with the steady ease of a man with no conscience keeping him awake, and I replayed every moment of that dinner in my head until I had catalogued every expression, every pause, every word. By 5 in the morning, I had stopped trying to sleep. I showered, dressed, and drove to Garland Street an hour early. The coffee shop was the kind of place that existed in the quiet margins of the city. Small wooden tables, jazz through a low speaker, no social media presence, no branding. The kind of place people chose when they needed to say things that could not be said anywhere with a digital footprint. Diana was already there when I arrived. No blazer today. Jeans, a dark sweater, her hair down. She had dressed to look like someone who was not a lawyer, and she had done it deliberately. A plain leather folder sat on the table in front of her. Her black coffee was barely touched. She looked up when I walked in and did not smile. I ordered a coffee, sat across from her, and waited. "I need to explain last night," she said. "I think you do," I said. She was straight. "Marcus does not know who I am to you. He has no idea I am your attorney. He approached me at an industry networking event 4 weeks ago. He was charming and persistent. I accepted a dinner invitation because I wanted to understand what kind of man he was outside of what you had described to me." I looked at her steadily. "That is a significant breach of professional ethics, Diana." "Yes," she said, without hesitation and without apology. "It is. And I will accept whatever consequence you choose to bring from that. But I need you to hear what I found before you decide how to respond to me." She opened the folder. Inside was a printed financial summary, account numbers, wire transfer dates, company names. My eyes moved across the page and began connecting figures I recognized from the documents Marcus kept in his locked home office drawer. "Marcus has been moving money," she said, "not just hiding marital assets, which he is absolutely doing through shell accounts registered under holding companies affiliated with his firm. He has been doing something significantly worse." She turned to the next page. "He has been siphoning funds from client accounts at the firm, small, graduated amounts designed to avoid the detection thresholds of automated financial monitoring systems. The method is sophisticated. The total, accumulated over 2 years, is close to $400,000. I heard the number. I did not look away from her. "That is not a marital dispute," she said. "That is fraud, corporate fraud, and potentially criminal fraud." I asked the question I already half knew the answer to. "Does anyone at the firm know?" She paused for exactly the right amount of time. "His boss knows." "Claire." "Yes." "Claire did not discover this and report it. She has been facilitating it. She co-signed the authorization codes on 3 of the largest transfers. Her own bonus structure benefited in the same quarters the largest amounts moved. She is not his victim. She is his partner." I sat back in my chair. Everything rearranged itself. Every single thing I had suspected, half dismissed, and forced myself not to look at directly for 2 years, rearranged into a picture so complete that it almost felt like something I had known all along. Marcus and Claire were not just having an affair, they were running a financial conspiracy from inside the firm that had built Marcus's career. And for 2 years, while I was at home trusting him, he had been embedding himself deeper and deeper into something that could destroy both of them. I looked at Diana. Why are you bringing this to me directly? Why not report it through formal channels? She looked at me with those steady, unreadable eyes. Because I want you to be the person who decides what happens to him, she said, and I want to help you do it correctly. There is a specific kind of rage that does not make any noise. It does not break things. It does not cry. It just sits across a small table from you, breathing evenly, and begins to build a structure. That was what I felt sitting in that coffee shop after Diana's last sentence landed. Not the hot, shaking anger I might have expected. Something colder and more deliberate than that. I asked the question I had been holding since the moment she walked through my door. Did you sleep with my husband? She did not look away. No. He tried. I redirected it. I needed him to trust me enough to speak freely. Men like Marcus talk when they believe a woman is interested in them. He told me about Claire without realizing what he was telling me. What specifically did he tell you? He called her his person inside the firm. He said she had been protecting him for 2 years. He laughed about it. She paused. He also spoke about you. He said you were too trusting, that you had never questioned any of the financial changes he made over the years because you were, his word, soft. I let that word sit for a moment. Soft. 6 years of patience and quiet observation, and that is the assessment I got in the vocabulary of a man who had just told his potential mistress that his wife would never catch him. Walk me through the strategy, I said. Diana had clearly come to this table to present a plan, not to discuss one. She had a legal framework already sketched out across the remaining pages of the folder. The approach required 3 things in sequence. First, a complete and documented paper trail linking the fraudulent transfers directly to Marcus's personal financial benefit. Second, direct evidence connecting Claire to the authorization of those funds in a way that could not be explained as routine business procedure. Third, a divorce filing strategy structured to capture every hidden asset before Marcus had any opportunity to respond. The moment you file, she said, he will know it is over. He will move money. He will contact Claire. He will try to shape the narrative before it can be shaped against him. The sequence of how we move matters more than anything else. We need all 3 pieces in place before a single document is filed anywhere. How long does that take? 4 to 6 weeks, if we are disciplined. And Marcus cannot know anything is in motion during that time. He cannot suspect a thing, which means you go home tonight and you are exactly the same woman he has always known. Warm, uncurious. She said the word without cruelty but with precision. Soft. I nodded. What do I need to do? For the next 40 minutes, she walked me through a specific sequence of actions that needed to happen in my own home. There was a drawer in Marcus's home office, locked, combination protected, that held the physical documents Diana needed photographed. I had seen Marcus enter the combination exactly twice in 6 years. I needed to recall it precisely. There was also an archived email thread in our joint inbox, 18 months old, between Marcus and Claire, that Diana had already identified through her own investigation. She needed me to export it cleanly, and throughout all of it, I needed to maintain a performance so complete that the man sleeping next to me every night would feel no shift, no change, no reason to suspect that the person he had described as soft was quietly building the case that would dismantle his entire constructed world. Can you do that? She asked. I thought about 6 years of being exactly that woman, 6 years of choosing not to push. 6 years of smoothing things over and asking gentle questions and believing the answers I was given. 6 years of the performance I had been doing not as a strategy, but as a reflex. Diana, I said, I have been doing exactly that for 6 years without even realizing it. The difference now is that I know I am doing it, and I know exactly why. She allowed herself one small, precise smile. We shook hands across that small wooden table, and the plan began. I want to tell you that living a double life was immediately difficult, that the guilt and the pressure cracked me by the end of the first week. But that is not what happened. The first week was almost unnervingly easy, and that told me something about how long I had already been performing a version of this. Every morning I made breakfast and asked Marcus about his day, and laughed at the right moments, and touched his arm when he talked about the office. Every night I was attentive and present and entirely unremarkable. And every night after he fell asleep, I sat in the dark living room with my phone and a small notebook and quietly documented everything I had observed. The drawer combination came on night 4. Marcus needed documents from his home office, and I followed him with 2 glasses of wine, which he accepted without thinking. The wine relaxed him just enough that he entered the combination without shielding it. 4 digits. I locked them in my memory the way you lock in something your survival depends on. The next afternoon, while he was in a 4-hour client meeting I had confirmed on his calendar, I went into the home office. The documents Diana had described were exactly where she said they would be. I photographed every page methodically, emailed them from an account Marcus did not know existed, and replaced each paper in the exact order I had found them. I measured the stacks with my thumb before I touched them and matched them exactly when I was done. The email thread was trickier. Marcus had shifted his primary communications to a private account I had no access to. But the thread Diana needed was old enough to still exist in the archived folder of our shared inbox. 18 months old, slightly buried, but there. I found it in under 4 minutes and exported it before I let myself feel the weight of what I was reading. I would read it properly later, not then. By the end of week 2, Diana had everything she had initially asked for. I told her so in a message from the private account and waited. And then Marcus did something I had not anticipated. He became affectionate. Not in the way of a guilty man scrambling to cover tracks. I had been watching that man for 2 years and I knew what his covering looked like. This was something different. He brought me flowers on a Tuesday with no occasion attached. He suggested a walk after dinner, something we had not done since our 2nd year of marriage. He told me one evening in the kitchen that he felt a distance between us and that he wanted to close it. And the way he said it was so close to genuine that it would have worked on the woman I was 8 weeks earlier. I stood there with a dish towel in my hands, looking at the face of a man who had called me soft to a woman he was trying to seduce, who had been stealing from his company for 2 years with the help of a woman he was sleeping with, and I felt something very clean and very cold move through me. I smiled. I said I would like that. And I meant it in a way he was never going to understand. I reported the change in his behavior to Diana. She was not surprised. He cannot identify specifically what has shifted, she said. But something in the atmosphere has changed and he feels it. He is doing what he does when control slips. He is turning on the charm. Do not get drawn in, and do not get angry. Both will make him more alert. I am neither, I told her. On day 17 of the plan, I received an automated notification from a shared investment account, one Marcus had quietly excluded me from for over a year, showing a wire transfer of $60,000 to a company I did not recognize. I forwarded it to Diana within the minute. Her response came back in under an hour. He is moving money. Either someone warned him or he is acting on instinct. Either way, the timeline has changed. We need to move. We had days, not weeks, and I had never felt more ready for anything in my life. Diana called me the following morning before 7. I was already awake. I had barely slept. Not from anxiety, but from the particular alertness of a person who knows something is coming and wants to meet it fully conscious. "I filed the divorce petition this morning," she said. I stopped in the middle of the kitchen. "You said we needed more time." "We did need more time. We no longer have it." Her voice was composed but direct. "I traced the company that received the $60,000. It is registered in Delaware under a director whose identity does not check out. It is a ghost account, Sophia. Marcus is not cautiously repositioning. He is dismantling. Someone told him something is in motion." "Claire," I said. "That is my assumption. I ran a background check on Marcus 3 days ago and pulled certain public financial records as part of standard legal preparation. If Claire has access to compliance alert systems at the firm, she could have seen the inquiry flag." She warned him. I pressed my back against the kitchen counter. "So she pushed him to run." "Yes, which is why the divorce petition could not wait. I have also filed simultaneously for an emergency financial restraining order. That freezes your known joint accounts and any asset documented in the marital estate. It creates a legal wall that he cannot move things past once it is served, but the window between filing and serving is narrow, and he is already in motion." "When does he get served?" "Within 24 hours, at the office." She paused. "Sophia, I need you to be in the company of someone when he finds out. Not out of the house. Do not give him the opportunity to remove anything physical from your home. But not alone. I will call my sister." "Good. One more thing." Her voice shifted into a register I had not heard before. "3 weeks ago, I made contact with an investigative journalist I trust. She covers corporate financial fraud. I have not shared any documents with her. Only established that we may have a story when the time is right. This decision is entirely yours. But if you choose to move forward, we can make this public. Not as a divorce story, as a fraud investigation, with Marcus and Claire named as co-conspirators." I had not expected that layer. "That was not part of the original plan," I said. "No, the original plan was built for a man moving slowly. This man is running. The most effective way to stop someone from running is to put their story into the public record before they have the chance to rewrite it themselves." I thought about Marcus laughing over dinner about the way he had been protected for 2 years. I thought about the word soft. I thought about Claire sitting in her office in her position of authority, untouched, while I had spent 2 years wondering what I was doing wrong in my own marriage. "Do it," I said. My sister Rosa arrived at the house by early afternoon. Marcus was served at his office at 2 o'clock. Rosa and I were sitting on the couch when his name began appearing on my phone screen. 7 calls in 8 minutes. Then the texts arrived in descending order of composure. "Sophia, we need to talk." Then, "What is this?" "Call me." Then the final one, the mask fully dropped. "What have you done?" "Call me right now." Rosa read each one over my shoulder. She picked up my phone, turned it face down on the coffee table, and said simply, "You do not owe him a call." Marcus came home at 7 that evening. He walked through the door with his suit slightly disheveled and his face carrying 6 years' worth of composure in the process of collapse. He looked at me. He looked at Rosa. He looked back at me. "You want to tell me what is going on?" he said, and his voice was still trying to hold its authority. "I think you know exactly what is going on, Marcus," I said. And for the first time in our marriage, he had nothing ready to say. There is a specific silence that fills a room when a person realizes the game is already over. Marcus stood in our doorway, and I watched it happen to him in real time. The rapid recalibration behind his eyes, the selection of which version of the truth to offer, the almost imperceptible decision to go soft before going defensive. He looked at Rosa first, calculating whether her presence was a problem he could manage. Then he looked back at me with the particular warmth he deployed when he wanted me to feel chosen and safe and willing to step away from the edge. "Sophia," he said, "whatever you think you know, or whatever someone has told you, we can talk about this privately. This does not need to be a scene. Rosa stays, I said. His jaw moved. After 6 years, I think I deserve a conversation. Not papers served at my office in front of my entire team with no warning, no. Sit down, Marcus, I said. He sat. I want you to understand how significant that was. Marcus did not sit when asked. Marcus redirected, reframed, moved the geography of every confrontation so that he was never quite the person being confronted. But he sat down. Because something in my voice told him that the conversation he was about to have was not one he could reframe. I did not raise my voice. I did not lean forward. I looked at him the way Diana had taught me to look, not with emotion visible on the surface, just with complete and unbroken directness. 3 months ago, I said, I hired a lawyer to begin documenting your financial activity. Over those 3 months, I photographed the documents in your home office drawer. I exported the email thread between you and Claire from 18 months ago, in which she discusses the authorization codes and expresses concern that the transfer amounts are becoming detectable. I have records of every shell company account, the Delaware Incorporation, and the $60,000 you moved 2 nights ago. The color left his face in a way I had never seen before. I also have a complete and documented record of a pattern of behavior connecting you and Claire beyond a professional relationship. I will not detail that tonight, because it is already detailed thoroughly in the material filed with my attorney. Marcus looked at me, and I saw something happen that I had genuinely not expected. He looked at me like he did not recognize me, not with anger, with something closer to bewilderment. The expression of a man who has made a very large miscalculation about the nature of the person he married. Sophia, he said, and his voice had shed every layer of performance now. The money. It is not what you think. Claire and I, it was nothing. It ended. I was going to end it. Which one? I said. The fraud or Claire? He did not answer. Because Diana, the woman you brought to my dinner table, she has been my lawyer for 3 months. She has heard everything I know about you. And before you consider calling Claire to coordinate a response, the financial restraining order is already filed. The accounts are frozen, including the Delaware account, including the $60,000. Marcus sat in his own living room chair, in his own house, and looked like a man standing in a building that had just been structurally condemned beneath him. You can communicate with my attorney from this point forward, I said. You have until tomorrow morning to collect whatever you personally need from this house. Rosa will be present the entire time. I stood up. He looked up at me from where he was sitting and said the most honest thing I think he had ever said to me in 6 years. I did not know you were capable of this. I looked at him for one last moment. I know, I said. That was always your mistake. Then I walked out of the room. Rosa stayed exactly where she was. The house was quiet. The candles on the dining table had burned all the way down, and I stood in the kitchen and let myself breathe. Marcus left the following morning with 2 bags and a box of personal items. Rosa was in the hallway the entire time, arms crossed, silent. He did not try to speak to me. He carried the specific, compressed dignity of a man who knows he has been caught with nothing left to offer in exchange for anything. He closed the front door behind him, and I heard his car leave the driveway, and then it was quiet. Rosa stayed for 2 more days. We drank tea and talked about things that had nothing to do with Marcus. We talked about the interior design project I had been neglecting for weeks. We talked about our mother. At one point, Rosa said very quietly, "She knew, you know. She always knew." And I said, "I know. I just was not ready to know yet." And Rosa nodded and did not push it further, because she understood that there is a difference between knowing something and being ready to act on it. She left on a Thursday morning. I closed the front door and stood in the hallway of my home, with my furniture and my choices and my name on the lease, and I called Diana. "Claire," I said, the moment she answered. "When do we deal with Claire?" The journalist is ready, Diana said. The documentation packet is ready. I have been waiting for you. I am ready. Petra was the journalist's name. Diana had been preparing a secondary file on Claire for weeks, separate from the divorce case, built specifically around Claire's role in the fraud. Claire's name on the authorization codes. Claire's direct communications with Marcus describing the method of transfer. A financial timeline showing that Claire's own bonus structure had spiked anomalously in the same quarters as the largest fraudulent transfers, suggesting she was not simply enabling Marcus's scheme, but taking a portion of it for herself. Diana introduced me to Petra over a call. Petra was methodical and careful, and spoke the way people speak when they have spent years being precise for a living. She walked me through what she was preparing, and she was clear about what it was. Not a personal scandal piece, not a revenge story, but a documented investigation into corporate financial fraud, enabled by a senior executive in breach of her fiduciary duty. The human story gave it context. The financial record was the story. Will Marcus and Claire both be named? I asked. Yes, Petra said. Then let us move forward, I said. 48 hours later, at 8 in the morning, the article went live. I did not read it immediately. I was sitting at my kitchen table having my coffee when Diana sent me the link with a single line. It is published, it is thorough, it is clean. I clicked it. The headline was specific and direct, the way good financial journalism is. It named the firm. It described the mechanism of the fraud in detail. It named Marcus as the primary executor. It named Claire as the senior facilitator. It included quoted documentation. Everything Diana had specifically cleared for disclosure. Nothing that touched privilege. Within 2 hours, the article had circulated through 3 financial industry forums. By mid-morning, the firm's managing partners had issued an internal statement that an urgent review was underway. Before noon, Claire had been placed on administrative leave. Marcus's professional email began bouncing at 2 in the afternoon. I sat in my living room and watched the afternoon light cross the floor of my house. I had expected to feel triumphant. I had expected something sharp and bright. Instead, what I felt was quieter than that. The specific, settled feeling of a person who stood in their own truth and let it do its work without requiring them to be loud about it. Then my phone rang. An unknown number. I answered it, and I heard Claire's voice on the other end of the line. She was crying. I recognized Claire's voice immediately. I had heard it enough times in my imagination over the past 2 years that hearing it for real felt almost strange, smaller than I had constructed it. Shaking in a way I had never pictured it shaking. She was crying with the kind of urgency that wants to be mistaken for remorse, but is actually just fear. I know the difference. Remorse sounds quieter than that. Remorse does not start talking before it has finished crying. Sophia, she said, the words unsteady and rushing out together. I know you have every reason not to hear me, but I need you to know. Marcus told me you two were separated. He told me that for over a year. He said the marriage was over in everything but paperwork, and that he was waiting for the right moment to finalize it. I did not know you were still— Stop, I said. She stopped. You authorized wire transfers, Claire. Your name is on the codes. The story Marcus told you about our marriage has no legal relevance to your professional conduct, and I am not the person you call to resolve that. A pause. The crying continued underneath it. The firm is going to fire me, she said. Yes, I said. They are. I have a daughter. I have a mortgage. I have— Claire. I kept my voice even. You signed off on $400,000 of stolen client funds. You did that in a boardroom with full authorization access, over a period of 2 years. Your daughter and your mortgage are not things I have any responsibility for. They were never my responsibility. She tried once more, in a quieter voice. Marcus manipulated both of us. Yes, I said. He did. I spent 3 months building a case instead of calling people to cry about it. I would suggest you do the same. I ended the call. I sat with the silence for a moment. And then I noticed something I had not fully expected. I did not feel victorious in the burning, cinematic way I might have imagined. What I felt was more like the end of a very long exhale, the specific completeness of a thing finally finished. Diana came over that evening. We sat on my back porch with a bottle of wine and the easy quiet of two people who have been through something real together and no longer need to perform anything for each other. "How are you?" she asked. "Honestly?" I said. "I thought it would feel bigger. I thought there would be more noise to it." "The size of it will settle in later," she said. "Right now your system is still running on the energy of the plan. In a week, when everything has gone quiet and you start living in the space that has opened up, that is when you will feel how large this actually was." She was right. She was right about most things, and I had stopped being surprised by that. 3 weeks later, the forensic financial analysis ordered by the court as part of the divorce proceeding uncovered 3 additional hidden accounts Marcus had failed to disclose, all of it folded into the marital estate, all of it subject to equitable distribution. The $60,000 he had attempted to move came back inside the frozen estate within 11 days, secured by court order before he could push it further. The firm launched their own recovery litigation against both Marcus and Claire simultaneously. Marcus hired 2 lawyers who made aggressive opening motions. Diana responded to every single one without blinking. I never staged a dramatic confrontation. I never threw a drink. I never screamed in a parking lot. The thing I built was the kind of justice that does not make noise when it arrives, but when it arrives, there is simply nowhere left to stand outside of it. Marcus lost his job, his accounts, his financial architecture, and the story he had spent years carefully managing. I kept my home, my business, half of every asset he had ever tried to hide from me. And I kept something worth more than all of that combined. I kept my name. I kept my dignity. And for the first time in years, I kept my peace. I do not tell this story to perform strength. I tell it because for a long time I thought my patience and my quietness were weaknesses. Marcus thought so too. He called me soft, like it was a verdict. But here is what I know now that I did not know when I was setting that dinner table and saving wine for an anniversary with a man who had already decided I would never figure it out. Patience is not softness. Clarity is not weakness. Knowing when to move and moving precisely when the time is right is not the behavior of a woman who does not know her own power. It is the behavior of a woman who does. I am not the same person I was the night Diana walked through my door. I am quieter, in the best way. I am more certain of myself than I have ever been, and I wake up every morning in my own home, with my own life, built on my own terms. If this story moved you, if it made you feel something real, please subscribe to this channel and hit the bell icon so you never miss a story like this one, because the next story we have coming for you, trust me when I tell you, is even more unbelievable than this one.